The alarm bells rang through the corridors of the UES horizon like an angry metal scream. Captain Jake Morrison ran his fingers through his gray hair as he stared at the red emergency message flashing on his command screen. 23 years in space, and he had never seen anything like this. "Captain, we're getting a priority transmission from Earth Command," said Lieutenant Amy Carter from her station. Her voice was steady, but Jake could see the worry in her green eyes. Amy was tough, had to be to survive as one of the few women in deep space exploration, but even she looked shaken. "Put it through," Jake said, settling into his captain's chair. The main screen flickered and Admiral Lisa Brooks appeared. Her face was grim, the kind of expression that meant bad news was coming. "Captain Morrison, I'm going to be direct," Admiral Brooks said without greeting. "We've received an ultimatum from something called the Vorthan Empire. They're giving humanity 72 hours to surrender completely or face what they call total extinction." Jake felt his stomach drop. Vorthans? Never heard of them. Neither had we until 3 days ago. Our long-range sensors picked up a massive fleet heading toward Earth. We sent diplomatic messages, tried to open communications. Their response was simple: submit or die. Amy leaned forward in her chair. "Admiral, what do we know about these Vorthans?" The Admiral's expression grew darker. "We've been monitoring galactic communications for the past 72 hours. Jake, these aren't just another aggressive species. The Vorthans have been expanding across the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Every single civilization they've encountered has either surrendered immediately or been completely destroyed within days." "How many civilizations?" Jake asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. 47 confirmed extinctions. Hundreds more surrendered and became slaves. No one has ever successfully fought them off. No one has ever made them retreat. They call themselves the Deathbringers, and every species in this part of the galaxy fears them. Jake stood up and walked to the main viewing screen. Outside, the stars looked peaceful, same as always. Hard to believe that somewhere out there, death was heading toward Earth at incredible speed. "What's our fleet strength?" he asked. 30 ships total, including yours. Our biggest vessels are half the size of their smallest fighters. Their main battleships are the size of small cities." Amy pulled up data on her screen. "Captain, I've been analyzing the communications we intercepted. The Vorthans seem to follow a very specific pattern. They arrive, demand surrender, wait exactly 72 hours, then attack with overwhelming force. It's worked every time for 1,000 years. Until now," said a new voice. Communications Officer Ben Taylor had been quietly listening to more intercepted messages. "Admiral, I'm picking up chatter from other species. They're all talking about humanity. Some are placing bets on how long we'll last. Most say less than 4 hours once the fighting starts." Admiral Brooks nodded grimly. "That's why I'm calling, Jake. Command has made a decision. We're not surrendering." The bridge fell silent. Jake looked around at his crew. Amy's face had gone pale. Ben was staring at his screen like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Even the normally calm navigation officer, Ryan Phillips, looked shocked. "Ma'am," Jake said carefully. "With respect, that sounds like suicide." "Maybe it is," the Admiral replied. "But we've been studying human history, Jake. Every time our species has faced extinction, we've found a way to survive. We don't roll over and die. We fight." Amy spoke up. "Admiral, the historical data shows that every species that fought the Vorthans used traditional military tactics. Large fleets in formation, direct confrontation, trying to match their firepower. It never worked." "Exactly," Admiral Brooks said. "Which is why we're not going to fight them the way everyone else did. Jake, I'm ordering you to take command of our defensive fleet. You have 48 hours to get to the Proxima system. That's where we're making our stand." "What's the plan?" Jake asked. "We're working on that. But here's what we know about humans that the Vorthans don't. We're stubborn, we're creative, and we've never met a problem we couldn't find a way around. Every war in human history has been won by the side that adapted faster, not the side with bigger guns." Ryan Phillips turned from his navigation console. "Captain, I've been looking at the Proxima system. It's full of asteroid fields, gas clouds, and solar interference. Terrible place for a traditional space battle. Perfect place for an unconventional one, Jake said, understanding starting to dawn on him. Admiral Brooks smiled for the first time during the conversation. That's why you're in command, Jake. Get to Proxima, start planning. And remember, we're not trying to destroy their entire fleet. We just need to make them think twice about whether humanity is worth the cost. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Jake looked at his crew, all of them staring back at him with expressions mixing fear and determination. Well, he said finally, looks like we're about to make history. Amy, I want everything we can find about Vorthan tactics and technology. Ben, keep monitoring their communications. Ryan, plot a course for Proxima, best possible speed. Captain, Amy said quietly, do you really think we can do this? Jake thought about his daughter back on Earth, probably getting ready for school right now, completely unaware that her world might end in 72 hours. He thought about all the human colonies scattered across space, all the people living their lives trusting that someone would protect them. Amy, humans have been facing impossible odds since we lived in caves and fought off creatures 10 times our size with nothing but sharp sticks. We're still here. That has to count for something. The Horizon's engines roared to life, carrying them toward a battle that would determine whether humanity would survive to see another century. Commander Ryan Phillips stood in the center of the Horizon's war room, surrounded by holographic displays showing the Proxima system. 29 other ship captains watched him through video screens, their faces tense but determined. In 36 hours, the most feared force in the galaxy would arrive here, expecting to find another easy victory. Ladies and gentlemen, Ryan said, we're going to give them something they've never seen before. Captain Jake Morrison walked around the three-dimensional map floating in the center of the room. The Proxima system was a maze of asteroid belts, gas clouds, and radiation storms. Most military commanders would call it a nightmare for space combat. Jake was starting to think it might be their salvation. Every report we have says the Vorthons fight the same way every time, Jake said. Massive formations, overwhelming firepower, direct assault. They expect their enemies to line up and fight like gentlemen. Good thing we're not gentlemen, said Captain Maria Santos from the destroyer UES Ranger. Her ship was small but fast, perfect for the kind of fighting Jake had in mind. Amy Carter pulled up new data on her screen. I've been studying their battle records. In every engagement, the Vorthans form a wall of ships and advance in perfect formation. They rely on their shields and heavy weapons to destroy anything in front of them. Like a hammer looking for nails, Ryan said. But what happens when the nail isn't there? Engineer Katie Wells had been working non-stop for the past day, modifying their ship's engines and weapon systems. She looked exhausted, but excited. Captain, I've finished the modifications. Our ships can now boost their speed by 300% for short bursts. The engines will overheat after 5 minutes, but that should be enough time to get in, hit hard, and get out. What about weapons? Asked Captain Tom Brady from the cruiser UES Freedom. We're not going to match their firepower, so we're going unconventional, Katie said. I've rigged half our torpedoes to spread metal debris instead of exploding. Create clouds of scrap that will mess up their sensors and damage their hull plating. Ben Taylor looked up from his communication station. Captains, I've been listening to more Vorthon chatter. They're not taking us seriously at all. Their commanders are making jokes about how quickly this will be over. Let them laugh, Jake said. Overconfidence has killed more armies than any weapon. Dr. Alex Turner, the fleet's psychologist, had been studying Vorthon behavior patterns. Jake, I've noticed something interesting in their communications. They have a very rigid command structure. Orders come from the top down, and lower-ranking officers never question them. It makes them efficient but also predictable. And if we cut off the head? Ryan asked. The body gets confused. They don't have backup plans because they've never needed them. Jake walked over to the map and pointed to a cluster of asteroids near the system's edge. Here's what we're going to do. We split into 3 groups. The first group hides in these asteroids. When the Vorthons arrive, they'll see our second group here, in the open, looking like we're trying to form a traditional battle line. Bait, Maria said, understanding immediately. Exactly. They'll move to crush what they think is our main force. That's when Group 1 hits them from behind and Group 3 attacks from the sides. Fast, hard, then disappear back into the asteroids before they can respond. What about their superior numbers? Asked Captain Linda Hayes from the UES Defiance. Numbers don't matter if they can't use them all at once, Jake replied. The asteroid field will force them to come at us in smaller groups. We fight them piece by piece, never giving them a chance to bring their full strength to bear. Katie pulled up technical specifications. I've also been working on something special. Our ships are smaller and more maneuverable than theirs. I've modified our navigation systems to work better in asteroid fields. We can fly through spaces that would tear their big ships apart. Like guerrilla warfare in space, Ryan said. Hit and run, never stay in one place long enough for them to target us properly. Amy had been studying more intercepted communications. Captains, I found something else. The Vorthons have never faced ramming attacks. Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons and explosives, but they're not made to handle a ship physically crashing into them. You're talking about suicide runs, Tom said quietly. Not suicide, Jake corrected. Calculated sacrifice. If we can take out one of their big ships by ramming it with one of our smaller ones, the trade is worth it. One human ship for one Vorthon. Capital ship is a victory. The room fell silent as the captains considered this. They all knew what Jake was really saying. Some of them weren't going home. I'll take the first ramming run, Maria said without hesitation. The Ranger is fast enough to get through their defenses. So will I, added Captain Steve Wilson from the UES Patriot. Ben looked up from his console. Captains, I'm getting something new. The Vorthon fleet just entered the outer system. They'll be here in 18 hours. Jake felt his heart rate increase, but his voice stayed calm. Then we better get ready. Katie, how long to finish the modifications? 12 hours, maybe 10 if we skip safety checks. Skip them. Alex, I want you to prepare psychological profiles on their command structure. If we're going to cut off the head, we need to know which head to cut off. Already working on it, Alex replied. Ryan started assigning positions to each ship. Maria, take your group to Asteroid Cluster 7. Tom, your ships hide in the gas cloud near the third planet. Steve, you're with me in the main asteroid field. What about communications? Asked Linda. Radio silence once they arrive, Ben said. I've rigged up a system using laser pulses that will be harder for them to detect. Short bursts, coded messages only. Jake looked around the room at his fellow captains. These were good people, most of them with families back on Earth. In 18 hours, many of them would be dead. But they all had the same expression he'd seen on human faces throughout history. Grim determination mixed with stubborn refusal to give up. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, in 18 hours the Vorthons are going to learn something new about humanity. We don't just fight to win, we fight to survive. And humans have been surviving impossible odds for thousands of years. The meeting broke up as the captains returned to their ships to prepare. Jake stayed behind looking at the holographic map of the Proxima system. Somewhere out there, 300 Vorthon warships were approaching. Confident in their victory, they were about to discover that humans had their own ideas about how wars should be fought. The Vorthon fleet appeared on the edge of the Proxima system like a dark storm cloud against the stars. 300 massive warships moved in perfect formation, their black hulls reflecting no light. Each ship was the size of a city, bristling, with weapons that could crack planets in half. Warlord Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Darkness, watching the scanner displays. His 4 eyes glowed with satisfaction as he counted the pathetic human vessels scattered across the system. 30 small ships against his mighty fleet. This would be over quickly. Warlord, his communications officer said, the humans are responding to our surrender demand. Display it, Zethkar ordered. Captain Jake Morrison's face appeared on the main screen. His expression was calm, almost relaxed. Warlord Zethkar, I presume. This is Captain Morrison of the human fleet. We've received your surrender demand. Zethkar leaned forward, expecting to hear the usual pleading and begging for mercy. Instead, Jake smiled. Come and take it. The transmission ended. Zethkar stared at the blank screen for a moment, then began to laugh. A deep, rumbling sound that filled the bridge. "Amusing," he said to his officers. "These humans have more spirit than most. Very well. Deploy the first attack wave. 20 ships should be more than enough to crush their entire fleet." Hidden in the asteroid field, Jake watched the Vorthan ships break formation. 20 massive vessels moved toward what appeared to be the main human battle line. Captain Tom Brady and his group waited in the open, looking vulnerable and exposed. "All ships, this is Morrison," Jake whispered into his communicator, using the laser pulse system Ben had designed. "Wait for my signal." The Vorthan ships opened. Fire first. Massive energy beams lanced out toward the human vessels, but the humans weren't where they expected them to be. Tom's ships scattered like leaves in the wind, using Katie's modified engines to boost away at impossible speeds. "What?" Zethkar growled as his weapons missed their targets. "How are they moving so fast?" The answer came in the form of Maria Santos and her squadron. The UES Ranger burst out of the asteroid field behind the Vorthan ships, along with 5 other human vessels. They moved like angry hornets, small and fast and deadly. Maria's ship fired a spread of modified torpedoes. Instead of exploding, they burst into clouds of metal fragments that spread across space like a deadly fog. The debris slammed into the Vorthan shields, overloading them with thousands of tiny impacts. "Shields down on 3 enemy vessels," reported her weapons officer. "Target their engines," Maria ordered. "Cripple them. Don't try to destroy them outright." The human ships danced through space, firing precisely aimed shots at vulnerable points on the massive Vorthan vessels. They were like wolves attacking, a herd of elephants too fast to catch, too smart to get trapped. One Vorthan ship, its engines damaged and spinning out of control, tried to retreat. That's when Captain Steve Wilson made his move. The UES Patriot came screaming out of a gas cloud, engines at full boost heading straight for the crippled vessel. "This is Wilson," he radioed to his crew. "All hands to escape pods. We're going to show these aliens what a real ramming attack looks like." The Patriot smashed into the Vorthan ship's hull like a bullet through paper. Both vessels exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Steve Wilson and his crew were gone, but they had taken a ship 10 times their size with them. Zethkar watched in shock as his scanner showed the results. In less than 10 minutes, the humans had destroyed 2 of his ships and crippled 3 others. Worse, they had done it without losing a single vessel except for the one that had deliberately sacrificed itself. "Impossible," he muttered. "Deploy the second wave. 50 ships this time." But the humans were already gone, disappeared back into the asteroid fields like ghosts. The Vorthan sensors couldn't track them through the metal-rich rocks and radiation. Interference. For the next 6 hours, the pattern repeated. The Vorthans would send out attack groups confident in their superior numbers and firepower. The humans would appear from nowhere, strike hard at vulnerable points, then vanish before the Vorthans could respond effectively. Sergeant Troy Baker led the most daring attack of all. His assault ship, the UES Wolverine, didn't just attack a Vorthan vessel from the outside. It landed on the hull like a parasite and began cutting through the armor plating. "Boarding parties away," Troy radioed, as his soldiers poured through the breach they had cut. The Vorthans had never experienced a boarding action before. Their internal security was designed to keep crew members in line, not to repel invaders. Troy and his men fought through the corridors of the Vorthan ship with weapons designed for close combat. The aliens were larger and stronger, but they weren't used to fighting in tight spaces. Within an hour, Troy's team had captured the ship's bridge and turned its weapons against the rest of the Vorthan fleet. By the end of the first day, Zethkar had lost 15 ships. The humans had lost 3. The mathematics of war had been turned upside down. "Warlord," his tactical officer said nervously, "perhaps we should deploy the full fleet, crush them with overwhelming numbers." "No," Zethkar said, his voice thoughtful. "That's what they want. They're trying to draw us into the asteroid field where our numbers won't matter." But the humans weren't finished. On the second day, they tried something even more unexpected. Captain Linda Hayes led her ship directly at a Vorthan formation, engines blazing. The aliens prepared to destroy her, but at the last second she spun her ship around and fired directly into a nearby asteroid. The explosion sent chunks of rock flying in all directions. The Vorthans found themselves dodging debris while trying to fight. Their perfect formations broken by flying boulders the size of buildings. They're using the environment as a weapon, Zethkar realized. These humans fight like no species we've ever encountered. By the third day, something unprecedented was happening. Vorthan captains were requesting permission to retreat from battle. Some were refusing direct orders to advance. The aura of invincibility that had surrounded the Vorthan Empire for 1,000 years was cracking. "Sir," the communications officer said, "we're receiving surrender requests from 3 of our own vessels. They say they can't continue fighting these humans." Zethkar stared at the tactical display. 50 of his ships were gone, or too damaged, to fight. The humans still had over 20 vessels operational. More importantly, his crews were starting to fear the small human ships more than they feared him. For the first time in his long military career, Warlord Zethkar was facing the possibility of defeat. The humans hadn't just survived the initial assault, they had made the mighty Vorthan Empire bleed. As the third day ended, both fleets pulled back to regroup. But something fundamental had changed in the Proxima system. The hunters had become the hunted, and the galaxy's most feared predators were learning what it felt like to be prey. Warlord Zethkar stood alone in his private quarters, staring at the battle report spread across his desk. In 1,000 years of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. The numbers told a story that should have been impossible. 53. Vorthan ships destroyed or crippled while the humans still had 22 vessels fighting at full strength. His door chimed. "Enter," he said without looking up. His second-in-command, Commander Vextar, stepped inside. The younger Vorthan's face showed confusion, and something Zethkar had never seen in his officers before. Uncertainty. "Warlord, the fleet commanders are requesting new orders. They don't understand how to fight these humans." Zethkar finally looked up. "Neither do I, Commander. Neither do I." For 3 days, the humans had done things that no military textbook said were possible. They fought without formation, attacked from impossible angles, and used their environment like a weapon. More disturbing, they seemed to view their own deaths as just another tactical option. "Sir, Captain Morgoth is requesting permission to retreat. He says his ship is undamaged, but his crew is too scared to fight effectively." Scared. Zethkar had never heard that word used to describe Vorthan warriors. His people had been the terror of the galaxy for 10 centuries. Now they were the ones feeling fear. "Send a message to the human commander," Zethkar said suddenly. "Request a meeting under temporary ceasefire. Neutral ground." "Sir, we don't negotiate with prey. These aren't prey, Commander, that's the problem." 2 hours later, Captain Jake Morrison stepped onto Proxima Station, an old mining facility that both sides had agreed was neutral territory. The station was mostly abandoned, but its main conference room still had power and air. Jake walked into the room and found himself face to face with Warlord Zethkar. The Vorthan was massive, nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and skin that looked like black stone. His red eyes glowed in the dim light. "Captain Morrison," Zethkar said in heavily accented English, "you're smaller than I expected." "Size isn't everything," Jake replied, taking a seat across from the alien warlord. "Your people are learning that the hard way." Zethkar sat down, his chair creaking under his weight. "Indeed. In 3 days, you have cost me more ships than I have lost in 50 years of conquest." "How?" Jake leaned back in his chair. "You really want to know?" "I must know. My commanders cannot understand your tactics. They say you fight like madmen, without sense or strategy." "We fight like humans," Jake said simply. "That's something your people have never encountered before?" "Explain." Jake thought for a moment, then began to speak. "Every species you've conquered before fought you the way they thought they were supposed to fight. Big ships in neat formations, following rules of war that made sense to them. But humans, we've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've learned that the only rule in war is to win. Zethkar's eyes narrowed. You speak of war as if it were an art. It is. But not the kind of art you practice. You fight, like you're painting a picture, everything neat and orderly. We fight like we're throwing paint at a wall, seeing what sticks. The Vorthan warlord was silent for a long moment. Then he said, Your warriors sacrifice themselves deliberately. Why? Because some things are worth dying for. Our families, our freedom, our future. Your people fight because they're ordered to. Our people fight because they choose to. Choice. Zethkar repeated the word like he was tasting something strange. In the Vorthan Empire, there is no choice, there is only duty. That's your weakness, Jake said. When your people run into something they don't understand, they can't adapt. They wait for orders from above. Our people adapt on their own, make their own decisions, find their own solutions. The door opened and Dr. Emma Hayes entered carrying a small data pad. She was the fleet's cultural advisor, and Jake had asked her to join the meeting. Warlord, she said politely, I've been studying your people's history. Very impressive expansion, very efficient conquest methods. Efficient, yes, Zethkar agreed. We have perfected the art of subjugation. But you've never encountered anything like human military thinking before, Emma continued. Your records show that every species you've fought used conventional tactics. They tried to match your strength with their strength. And failed, Zethkar said. Because they were playing your game by your rules. Humans don't do that. We change the rules. Emma activated her datapad and showed Zethkar images from human history. Battles where smaller forces had defeated larger, ones through cunning, deception, and unconventional tactics. This is from our planet's history, she explained. A small group of warriors holding off a massive army at a narrow pass. Outnumbered 300 to 1, but they chose the ground and made the enemy come to them. Zethkar studied the images. They all died. Yes, but they held long enough for their people to prepare defenses. They turned certain defeat into eventual victory. Your species has a strange relationship with death, Zethkar observed. We don't seek death, Jake said. But we're not afraid of it either. That gives us options your people don't have. The Vorthan warlord stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. For 1,000 years, my people have conquered. Through fear. We arrive. We demand submission. We destroy those who resist. It has always worked. Until now, Emma said gently. Until now. Zethkar agreed. You have shown me something I did not think possible. You have made the Vorthan Empire afraid. Good, Jake said. Fear makes you think, and thinking might keep us all alive. Zethkar turned back to face them. If I were to continue this battle, I would eventually win. I have 250 ships remaining. You have 22. Numbers aren't everything, Jake replied. You've lost 50 ships to our 8. At that rate, we'll both be extinct by the time this is over. Yes, Zethkar said slowly. That is what I have realized. Defeating you would be costly. Perhaps too costly. Emma leaned forward. Warlord, what if there was another way? What if victory didn't have to mean destruction? Explain. Cooperation instead of conquest. Partnership instead of slavery. Your people are strong and disciplined. Our people are adaptable and creative. Together, we might both benefit. Zethkar was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, No species has ever made the Vorthan Empire consider retreat. No species has ever cost us so much for so little gain. No species has ever made us question our methods. We're not trying to destroy you, Jake said. We just want to survive. But we'll fight to the last ship if we have to. I believe you would, Zethkar said. And that, Captain Morrison, is why you have earned something no other species has ever received from the Vorthan Empire. What's that? Respect. The word hung in the air between them. Jake looked at Emma, who nodded slightly. This was the moment they had hoped for but never dared to expect. What happens now? Jake asked. Zethkar straightened to his full height. Now, Captain Morrison, we discover what it means for the Vorthan Empire to meet its equal. The meeting ended with both sides agreeing to extend the ceasefire while they worked out terms for something that had never existed before. A treaty between the Vorthan Empire and a species they could not conquer. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Proxima, and the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. On Earth, Admiral Jake Morrison stood in his new office, looking out at the bustling spaceport below. Ships from dozens of worlds came and went, but now they carried diplomats and traders instead of weapons and fear. The door chimed, and Amy Carter walked in. She wore the uniform of a commander now, her promotion well earned after her crucial work during the crisis. The Vorthan delegation has arrived, she reported. Warlord Zethkar is requesting a meeting. Jake nodded. Send him in. The massive Vorthan entered, but something was different about him. He still looked imposing, but there was a thoughtfulness in his red eyes that hadn't been there before. Behind him walked a smaller Vorthan that Jake didn't recognize. Admiral Morrison, Zethkar said, using Jake's new rank. May I present Commander Velshan, my new strategic advisor? Warlord, Jake replied, standing to greet them. How are the joint exercises going? Better than expected, Zethkar admitted. Your Captain Phillips has been teaching our fleet commanders some interesting tactics. Yesterday, one of our captains successfully used what you call a feint to outmaneuver 3 enemy ships in simulation. Jake smiled. Ryan always was good at thinking outside the box. The treaty signed after the Battle of Proxima had been unlike anything in galactic history. Instead of surrender or destruction, it established humanity and the Vorthan Empire as military partners. Human tactical advisors worked with Vorthan fleet commanders, while Vorthan engineers shared their advanced technology with human scientists. The results have been remarkable, Commander Velshan said in careful English. Our conquest of the Zelani Republic took only 3 days instead of the projected 2 weeks, and with minimal casualties on both sides, Zethkar added. The Zelani surrendered quickly when they realized they faced both Vorthan strength and human strategy. Amy pulled up a holographic display showing the galactic map. Red dots marked Vorthan territory, while blue showed human space. Green dots scattered throughout the galaxy represented species that had reached out to Earth, seeking their own partnerships. 47 different species have contacted us in the past month, Amy reported. They all want to know how we earned Vorthan respect without being destroyed. What do you tell them? Zethkar asked, genuinely curious. The truth, Jake replied. That respect isn't given, it's earned, and that sometimes the smallest fighter can teach the biggest warrior something new. The door opened again, and Katie Wells entered with her arms full of technical reports. She had been promoted to chief engineer and was now leading the technology exchange program between humans and Vorthans. Admiral, you need to see this, she said excitedly. The Vorthans have helped us solve the faster-than-light communication problem. With their power systems and our signal processing, we can now send instant messages across the entire galaxy. Impressive, Jake said. What else? Our engineers have been working with theirs on ship design. The new hybrid vessels are faster than Vorthan ships and tougher than human ones. Plus, they can be built in half the time it used to take. Zethkar looked pleased. The cooperation has benefited both our peoples. My scientists are particularly interested in human medical technology. Your ability to heal severe injuries quickly could save many Vorthan lives. Dr. Alex Turner had established a new diplomatic protocol based on psychological understanding rather than simple dominance. His work was being studied by species across the galaxy who wanted to avoid the mistakes that had led to so many extinctions. Alex's methods are spreading, Amy reported. The Krill Confederacy just signed a peaceful trade agreement with the hegemony of worlds. 6 months ago, they were ready to go to war. Understanding prevents conflict, Zethkar said. This is something the Vorthan Empire is still learning. Jake walked back to the window. Below, he could see human and Vorthan engineers working together on a new class of exploration vessel. Children from Earth's schools were taking virtual tours of Vorthan cities, while young Vorthans learned human languages and customs. Warlord, he said, When you first arrived at Proxima, what did you expect to find? Another easy conquest, Zethkar admitted. Perhaps a few hours of resistance before the inevitable surrender. Your species would become servants of the Empire, useful but unimportant. And now? Zethkar was quiet for a moment. Now I understand that strength comes in many forms. Your people taught mine that victory without understanding is meaningless. That cooperation can be more powerful than conquest. Commander Velshan added, the other Vorthan warlords are studying what happened at Proxima. Some are beginning to question whether every species we encounter must be destroyed or enslaved. Change takes time, Amy said. But it's happening. Ben, Taylor's voice came over the intercom. Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Outer Rim. The savage clans are threatening 3 peaceful worlds. They're requesting Vorthan human assistance. Jake looked at Zethkar. Interested in another joint operation? Indeed, the Vorthan replied, though I suspect the savage clans will surrender quickly once they realize what they face. Probably, Jake agreed. Word travels fast in this galaxy. Everyone knows now that humanity and the Vorthan Empire work together. As they prepared to leave for the new crisis, Jake reflected on how much had changed. The Vorthan Empire was still the most powerful military force in the galaxy, but they were no longer the most feared. Instead, they had become respected partners in keeping the peace. Admiral, Amy said as they walked toward the transport, I've been thinking about something Zethkar said during the battle, about how we changed the rules. What about it? Maybe that's what humans do best. When we can't win by the existing rules, we create new ones. Jake smiled. And sometimes those new rules work better for everyone. The transport lifted off, carrying the joint human-Vorthon diplomatic team toward their next mission. Behind them, Earth continued its work as the unlikely bridge between the galaxy's greatest military power and the dozens of smaller species who had lived in fear for centuries. In the end, humanity had done something no other species had managed. They had faced the most feared aliens in the galaxy and not only survived but earned their respect. More importantly, they had shown that cooperation could be stronger than conquest and that understanding was the greatest weapon of all. The galaxy was learning that humans might be small, but they had big ideas about how different species could work together. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the stars seemed a little less dangerous and a lot more hopeful.